All right. Well, by my clock, it looks like it's 10:02. So to reward the people who joined on time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Make sure we get this done in a timely manner. So, welcome everyone to May's South Atlantic Third Thursday Web Forum. My name is Lori Barrow, and I serve as the Information Transfer Specialist and USDA Forest Service Liaison to your Cooperative. And it looks like most folks on this call are probably have joined us before for one of these calls, but for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, as the name implies, on the third Thursday of each month, your Cooperative hosts a web forum that provides an opportunity to share information about what's going on within the Cooperative and how it's getting done. And it also serves as a really nice opportunity for folks to ask any questions and provide any input that will help guide and direct the future of the South Atlantic Landscape Conservation Cooperative. So each forum has roughly the same agenda, consisting of a brief introduction of the presenter, followed by a 30 to 40-minute presentation. And following the presentation, there'll be a block of time set aside to ask any questions on the presentation. And the remaining time will include a brief update from your Cooperative, followed by an open discussion where anybody can ask any questions about what we're up to. It's getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody just to kind of keep the lines clear. So,
the conference is now in silent mode.
All right, great, and that should cut down on some of the feedback or background noise that y'all were hearing there. During the presentations, if you do have any questions, you can either type them directly into the chat box, which I'll be monitoring throughout the presentation, or hold them until after the presentation, at which time you can unmute your line and ask them directly. So if you do use the chat box and wish your questions to be read during the open discussion, please remember to send the note to everyone. There's 2 Rua Mordecais on there right now, so it gets a little bit confusing if you send it to one or the other. Then, of course, at any time during the open discussion at the end, all you need to do is *6 to unmute yourself, and we should be able to all hear you. Okay. Okie doke. Well, moving right along. With that, let me first say that on the line, I already introduced myself, Lori Barrow, and with us from the Cooperative as well, we have our coordinator, Ken McDermott, our science coordinator, Rua Mordecai, our socioeconomic adaptation coordinator and National Park Service liaison, Janet Jakir, our GIS coordinator, Amy Keister, and Brad Pickens, a postdoc fellow at NC State, working to help integrate South Atlantic indicator models into the Cooperative's conservation blueprint. All right, with those introductions out of the way, presenting today will actually feature both myself and Rua as we report back and discuss what your Cooperative is up to over the next 12 to 18 months. So because I'm the one talking right now, I'm going to go ahead and do my little portion. So before we dive into what's coming up over the next 12 to 18 months, I'm going to provide a really brief summary of the results from our 2013 stakeholder survey. So as folks on this call may remember, earlier this year we asked y'all to participate in a survey for our second annual report card on how we're meeting our goals and adhering to our principles as a cooperative. And just for some background, well, only 43 folks participated out of the total 730 some odd plus folks we have in our web community. We wanted to be sure to report back and let folks know that we do dig into this information and use it to help guide our efforts and advance the current state of knowledge about how the South Atlantic is serving you. So out of those who responded, most folks indicated that they worked for a federal agency, such as the Fish and Wildlife Service or the Forest Service. We had quite a few representatives from the state agency, primarily from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and then a bunch of folks from the universities that dot the geographic footprint of the South Atlantic. And we found out that folks here at the Cooperative primarily find about activities that are ongoing by either reading the newsletter or looking at our website. And you can see we have a high percentage of folks who also interact directly with South Atlantic LCC staff, and then, just over 50% who actually have participated in a workshop or attend a web presentation such as the one you're listening to right now. And of note, but not really shown on this slide, I thought it was also interesting. Approximately 80% of folks who responded indicated that they had been involved with the cooperative for over a year, which is up from last year. And we also saw a small jump in folks who had been involved for less than 3 months. So we're maintaining folks who are already engaged, and then also getting a few more folks to be engaged with the cooperative. So moving along, on the graph to the left, you can see most folks felt they knew a fair amount about the current and ongoing work of the cooperative. And then to the right, when asked how well they felt the South Atlantic LCC communicated its progress, most indicated the cooperative somewhat met or exceeded expectations. And on the bottom there, 81% indicated staff members met or exceeded expectation when asked the question, over the past year, how well did staff members answer your questions or address your concerns? So not only were folks interacting directly with us, but it looks like we're meeting folks' expectations and answering their questions or concerns. So hooray! With that little bit of background in mind, I'm going to move on to how respondents felt the cooperative did in meeting its goals and adhering to its principles. So without diving too deep into the data, we just wanted to provide a real quick glance. And as you can see here, most folks felt the cooperative was doing a fairly good job at adhering to its goals over the past 12 months, especially in delivering the shared conservation blueprint, which your cooperative was focused of all 2013 on doing, and building communication support and facilitating collaboration across the network. And I know I'm jumping through this fairly fast, but there'll be some time at the end. And when asked how the cooperative was adhering to our guiding principles, once again, you can see that most folks tended to think that the cooperative somewhat or usually adhered to these guiding principles, with strong beliefs that the cooperative was adding value to landscape scale partnerships and was developing and relying on the best science available. Not shown in this display, but worth noting, folks were given options for neither agree or disagree, as well as didn't know. And for a few of these, it seemed as though folks weren't exactly sure how to answer this. So we've actually had ongoing discussions that we may have to think about how we ask this and what we're actually trying to get out of this particular set of questions, because some of these are fairly ambiguous. So we'll probably be changing this set of questions up next year. And finally, we were interested in learning more about our user community satisfaction with South Atlantic LCC products. We asked, based on 4 of our primary products, our monthly newsletter, our website, the LCC projects page, and the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas. And you can see from the graph that for the most part, folks tended to be very satisfied with the newsletter and website, and of particular interest to us, when asked about the project page and the CPA, or Conservation Planning Atlas, quite a few folks indicated that they had never used them before. And while the survey didn't dive deeper into finding out why folks may not be using these tools, it is of interest to us, as folks who filled out the survey are likely to be fairly engaged, and so we're interested in trying to find out why they may not have ever used it before, and what some of those reasonings were behind it. And this just kind of goes to show that we're already using this, the results of this report card, and thinking about how we can improve the delivery in some of these tools. In fact, we have some folks coming on, and who are already on as well, Louise Vaughn and Hillary coming up, who are going to help folks interact with these tools. So just to keep it brief, I just wanted to provide a brief snapshot of the results from the Cooperative's 2013 report card. And if you're a member of the web community, which I think most folks on this call are, in June's newsletter, you'll actually be able to find out more details about what was looked at within this survey, and I'm happy to field any questions before I hand the reins over to Rua to discuss what's coming up over the next year or so. So just remember to *6 to unmute yourself if you do have any questions, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball over to you, Rua, real quick. So just remember, *6 yourself if you do have any questions. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'm moving this over. Feel free to ask any questions for Lori on some of the results. Let's see.
Yay, there we go.
All right. So what I was going to do today is give you some highlights from the South Atlantic Work Plan, talk about the sort of plan for the next 18 months or so. And so really is going to talk about two of the main components, sort of building Blueprint version 2.0, so updating our current Blueprint, implementing this version 1 and sort of working with folks that are going to try to use this initial version, and then also getting a little bit into the timeline. So this is something that we're doing that we haven't done in the past, and so we're now trying to get a little bit more specific about exactly what's going to happen at what month throughout the year. So we're trying to chart that out, give a little more certainty on when things are happening. So first off, Blueprint 2.0. So there was both from the steering committee and also from the different reviews that probably a number of you submitted and did. There are a number of improvements that people are looking at in this next version. It's like, okay, Blueprint 1, okay, we got a great start, but it's not perfect. There's still a lot we could do. So one thing that folks were looking for was it being more explicitly connected to the indicators. So originally we were hoping we'd be able to, pre those workshops that we had last year, have all the different indicator models put together to allow you to sort of work explicitly with the indicators. And so we had some, but not all. So the hope is that the plan for this 2.0 is to be more explicitly connected to the indicators. And also, this is a request from some other reviewers in the steering committee, is to be based more on data than expert opinion. So we're not throwing out all the work that happened in Blueprint version 1, but in the update, try to bring in something more data-driven approach. And the last thing that came a lot was a finer resolution. Is there a way we can get to something below the HUC 12 level? And so those are three key features that have been asked for by the steering committee and others that we're going to be working towards in building this version 2. So in order to get there, one of the things we need to do is complete our indicator modeling. So that's a sort of a key part. If it's going to be data-driven, explicitly connected to the indicators, well, that means we need to have all our indicator models done. So one big thing we're doing in order to do that, we're going to need to go through and what we've already started this month, revise the natural and cultural resource indicators. And so that includes going back, if you remember when we did our indicators, we had these specific practical and ecological criteria that we used to choose them. The practical was, well, we're picking them because we thought we could model them as specified. And in some cases, as we've gone through them, we found out, well, we thought we'd be able to model them, but in some cases we haven't been able to. And so going through this process, which I'll talk about in a little more detail, related to getting these to a point where we can actually model them. That will also allow us to complete a State of the South Atlantic report. So you remember we had this sort of past, current, future condition of the indicators, but we've been a little bit hindered by not being able to fully finish the modeling of those. So now focusing dead on completing the State of the South Atlantic report, or finishing the indicators will help us get to that, how our indicators do and where are they going to be in the future. The other piece then is, okay, once we have our indicators modeled, building this version 2. And so using these modeled indicators in a data-driven approach. And also integrating with the Peninsula Florida LCC. So in addition to doing this, trying to do an update using our indicators in a more data-driven approach, we've also been working across LCC boundaries, and part of the plan is to integrate with the Peninsula Florida LCC's design, which is based on their with their CLIP program. What is it? Cooperative Land and Waters identification project. I always forget, and I say it different every time. But anyway, so we're now working with staff of that cooperative and other folks from Florida. I think Beth's on the line right now, and she's cringing. God, why can't really remember that acronym? But so we're working with folks down in Florida to try to make sure that this next version of the blueprint is as seamless as possible with CLIP and the conservation design coming out of the Peninsula Florida LCC. So that's going to be another focus. We've already started having some of these discussions for version 2. Something else I didn't mention that I just realized was missing from that earlier slide of the version 2 is also an increased focus on looking at some of these rare, range-restricted, and at-risk species to try to make sure, are we actually capturing them within what we're doing right now? So that's another piece, not really changing the indicators themselves per se, but really looking closely and evaluating how well this is working for some of these rare endemics. Okay, so those are the two big pieces on building version 2.0. So now a little bit more detail on the indicator revision process. And I was going to put a few slides together, but I figured it might make even more sense, since it's up on the website, to just go to the website and show you where some of these details are. So here I am up on the South Atlantic LCC website. You go under Conservation Blueprint. You click on Indicators, and so we've updated this, this indicator page to include a little bit more information. And under this, if you scroll down, you can get to how can I help improve the indicators. And so this actually lays out the monthly schedule for each of the ecosystems. So in May, we're doing the landscape. So this is for this month, connections across all terrestrial ecosystems. And so you can see each month through December, this is when we're going to be going through each of the indicators. And so I have landscapes as an example. Now we've got the details on the revision. So if you click on this, you can actually see, okay, here's the sort of overview, reminders of the criteria, results from some of the testing of the specific indicators, why did we pick it, what came out of the practical testing, are there any recommended changes for discussions. So that document is there. Also for all of these, we also have GIS layers for you to review, so we've modeled them out for review and discussion. So you can actually click on these GIS layers to take a look at. And so here's one of the potential ones to get at our patch size indicator. So this is up on the Planning Atlas, so you can see what it looks like modeled, look at some different options. And then for those that want to go into the really gory detail, up here under the description, there's a link to a brief summary. So then you could go even deeper, and this links to more of the modeled, what are the mapping steps, what are the input data, things like that. So that helps you go, if you really want to go a little bit deeper into some of these modeled pieces, that's where that is. Okay, so back here. So that information is up. And what we're doing, and I'll go over the typical monthly schedule, is if you'll notice at the bottom here, there's a link to sign up to be part of one or more of the ecosystem teams. So from here, then you can sign up and join teams. So if you're interested in being part of, well, hey, I want to be part of the discussions for the freshwater aquatic in December, or the marine in November, then you can go in here and sign up, and that way I can get you on the list, send you some additional information, make sure you're part of scheduling calls, that kind of thing. So if you want to be involved in some of the revisions, go ahead and go follow that link and sign up for whichever teams you want. You can sign up for multiple ones. You can sign up for just one. And so that is a quick overview of some of the indicator process. So all that's up there on the website, and as we get more information, we'll keep adding it up to the site. So a typical month, so every month we're doing 1 to 2 ecosystems. And so a typical month, in the first week, we'll have the GIS layers and some of the practical testing, which is actually, we've tried to model it, and we figured out sort of, if we can't do it, we present some alternatives. So that gets released in the newsletter. So if y'all saw in this month's newsletter, that was when we did the announcement that, okay, we're doing the landscapes, here's the link to the data and some more information. So that happens in the first week of basically every month through December. Around the 15th of the month, right about the middle, we'll be releasing some of the ecological testing results. So, okay, we've got our indicators, and so this was testing how well these indicators predict other important parts of the ecosystem. So if you remember, there was a call fairly recent, actually a few months ago, on what other things do you want to test these indicators against? What do you want to make sure isn't slipping through the cracks? So we've been using some of those and some of the things that came into the indicator as part of the indicator process as well. And so, for example, I'll give you one that we're about to, hopefully we should have up maybe today or tomorrow, that we tested with the landscape. So we have this low road density potential indicator. That's one of our alternatives for the patch size indicator. So our areas of low road density also places with the most rare plants. So we have data from the Carolina Vegetation Survey, actually point level data, looking at conservatism and where some of these rare plants are, and looking, okay, well, how well is this indicator also capturing something else that we didn't pick as an indicator? So that's an example. We have a bunch of other interesting ones, and so we'll have that out pretty soon. So this is really sort of looking at how well are these indicators doing. Are they actually working in the way we expect them to work, and are there some things slipping through the cracks that we need to be thinking about? So we'll have that around about the middle of each month ready to go for people to take a look at as well. Then around the third to fourth week, that's when we'll have an actual call of the revision team. So we'll be sending out the information. I'll probably making some calls to some of the people pre that. And then we'll be having a call of the team to really mull over and make some decisions about what we might want to tweak and what we wouldn't. So the idea here is we're really focusing on revising the things that have completely failed our basic criteria for being indicators. So if we just can't model it, then that's the kind of things we're focusing on revising and looking at what the next things might be. And then by the end of the month, we'd have our final indicators and the data layers for Blueprint 2.0. So every month as we're moving through ecosystems, we would have, okay, so like next month we're doing beaches and dunes. So we'd start in the beginning of June, and then by the end of June, okay, those are the layers, those are our sort of revised indicators that we're going to use for Blueprint 2.0. So that's the monthly schedule, a typical month for these indicators. Next on to the other section, which is implementing version 1.0. So this is really that learning experience, trying out this first version we have, figuring out what's working well, what's not, and then feeding that back into the indicator, feeding back that into the development of Blueprint 2. So there's a couple of, so here's the sort of major things that are happening. We're working with the sort of individual steering committee members and partners on key questions that they would like to be addressed. Supporting members of the user team. So as you remember, I'll talk about that in a second, we have our user team, which is our set of early adopters that want to try to use version 1. They're going to sort of try out, and they'll be our focused learning group for improving version 2. Also a few focuses that came out of the steering committee, working across the states to help support some of the bobwhite quail, the NBCI initiative, trying to find new ways at a system level to sort of integrate and build some support for conservation actions that benefit quail, but also the ecosystem as a whole. Informing state wildlife action plans. And the other piece of this is continuing to update and improve the Conservation Planning Atlas itself. So this is the platform for serving up the blueprint. And so now that we have a first version and folks be starting to use it, then we can start using that to improve the interface, to make it as easy as possible and smooth as possible for folks that want to try to access the information behind the blueprint. So those are the major things going on in version 1.0. reminder, here's some of the folks on the user team. And so for example, and there's a lot of cross-pollination. So, for example, Breck and Billy and Reggie, one of the things they want to work on as users is that, supporting the NBCI and fitting that into a bigger picture. So also, sort of example, so Wilson Laney on the bottom. So Wilson's actually, one of the things he's interested in working on, he's a member of the Wake County Open Space Committee. So interested in then seeing, okay, let's try out the blueprint for prioritizing open space land acquisition within Wake County. Let's see what works and what doesn't and help it improve that way. Mary Morrison from the Forest Service, one of the planners out there. So she's a Francis Marion planner, wants to use it for the plan revision for Francis Marion. How do they fit into the bigger picture? And so there's a number of different folks that are on this team, and so we're working on, and some of the folks that are actually on this call right now. So as a team, we're working on identifying some shared issues, and these folks are going to get some additional sort of support and attention as some early adopters trying these things out. Okay, so overall timeline for all these pieces that are coming together. So we have these indicator revisions, and so that's happening from May through December. So you see here it's 1 to 2 ecosystems per month. And then as far as developing this next version of the blueprint, as we move through the ecosystems, that'll be a chance to keep exploring some of the methods we want to try in developing version 2. And I'll actually, in the future, fairly soon, give you a little more blog post and update about some of the ideas for how we do this data-driven approach. But so these, as we finish these ecosystems, that helps fold us into testing some different methods. And then round about December, that's when we'll have our full, end of December, have our full collection of indicators. So we'll spend a few more months digesting that, putting those together, and then basically very early spring, that sort of February, March time period, we'll be having some more workshops where we get people together to help to basically do the 1.0 update and build version 2. And then the plan then is to have a draft in, let's see, is it 2 months before June, 2 months before our sort of final deadline for the blueprint, have it out, sort of, okay, here's our draft, just like we did this year, and then have this final version of Blueprint 2.0 done by June. At the same time, and more formally starting in June, we're going to be working on supporting folks that are going to be trying out version 1, trying it out for specific decisions, seeing where it works well, seeing where it doesn't, and then feeding that back into the process of developing this next version of the blueprint. So that's going to be happening through the rest of the year, leading up into until early spring of next year, where we start having the workshops and version 2 starts shaping up a little bit more detail. And that's when we're going to start transitioning to basically working with version 2.0, improving the interface, and start moving towards folks using a next version of the blueprint. So that's the overall timeline. And I know it's a bit of a whirlwind, but that's a quick overview of the plan for the next 18 months. So with that, open that up to questions either on the chat box or what is it, *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, Rua, this is Ken. Let me just add one little piece in here, because I can't remember what we did on the last webinar, but the direction we're headed, just to make sure folks understand, is that we met with the steering committee with version 1 of the blueprint back in March, and this direction that we're heading now is a direct result of the feedback and the actions they asked us to do to move forward. So this idea of building version 2 to be more data-driven, yet not losing the expert knowledge approach, and sort of a hybrid approach, is directly as a result of the review by them in our steering committee meeting. And now this is sort of the details about how we get to that next version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for adding that, Ken.
All right. Just remember, folks, if you do have any questions for Rua on his presentations or even on the report card that I presented on earlier, just remember to *6 to unmute yourself.
Or you could also type in the chat box. That'll work as well. All right, so maybe if you're still thinking about something or something comes on later, then I think we still will have time at the end of the webinar for any questions about Lori's presentation, what I just talked about, or anything else in the updates as we move forward.
Yeah, and I'd even ask too if there's any feedback on this. Or what are we missing, or does this make sense, or something just doesn't seem right, or what have you. We always want to hear back from as many folks as we can. I mean, and try to figure out different ways. And these calls and webinars are one way for us to do a reality check with folks we may not talk to every day. So.
Mm-hmm. And there will be a little chunk of time at the end too, in case you're just kind of thinking something over. But with that, I think we can just jump into a few of the South Atlantic LCC updates. So we have a couple updates, and again, I'll just share two quick ones regarding the national workshop on large landscape conservation being held in Washington, D.C. this October. They're still accepting proposals till May 31st to present at that conference, and the program emphasizes lessons learned and best practices in every aspect of large landscape conservation startup, implementation, management, and assessment. And if you're interested in learning more about that, the national workshop on large landscape conservation, you can find out more about it at largelandscapenetwork.org. And we also have some new conservation planning atlas improvements coming your way over the next week or so. So first, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Critical Habitat Mapper is now available and contains multiple layers related to final critical habitats identified for endangered and threatened species. I was playing around with it yesterday, and it was really interesting, not being a GIS person. But and then coming soon, we'll have more on the Nature Conservancy's Southeast Resilience data, which quantifies a combination of landscape diversity and local connectedness to represent the number of microclimates available to species across the landscape. Again, these are available through the Conservation Planning Atlas, which can be accessed through our website under that drop-down menu for planning tools. We have a few other updates from cooperative staff, so Ken, I'll go ahead and let you provide those updates.
So as you saw in our timeline and all the stuff that Rua presented there's a fair amount of work for to get to version 2 by June of 2015. One way we're doing that, in addition to all the help that we hope that those of you out there in the stakeholders can help with in volunteering for teams and things like that, is that we're adding a permanent staff member, Hillary Morris, who's been an intern with the cooperative for the past couple of years. Will be starting here next month full-time and be doing a lot of the work related to Blueprint 1 implementation and testing. So that's gonna help a lot. She will also probably be helping us with communications, because I'm sad to report that that Lori Barrow, who's been hosting these webinars and really carrying the weight for the communications that we do out to everybody about what the cooperative is doing, will be leaving and heading off to work on her PhD. And so that's going to be a huge loss, and that also Lori's role has been to help provide some more directed support to the Forest Service through a shared position that the Forest Service and the Fish and Wildlife Service has been funding over the past 2 or 3 years. So we're going to be losing that capacity at least for the short term, and we'll be asking Hillary to fill in for that, but also be looking for a way to work with other partners and stakeholders to hopefully provide some capacity to continue that work on in a shared way into the future. So that's a lot. And Lori, we're going to be really sorry to see you leave because you've been doing a great job with this and all the other communications work. And then on the LCC network update, I just want to mention a couple things. One is that the LCC network is undertaking a development of a strategic plan to help clarify the role of the network and what the network, how it adds up, what its key efforts will be, and how it will work together across all the individual LCCs. That'll be there'll be sort of a rapid approach to doing that, and myself and Cale Godfrey, who's the steering committee member from Virginia, Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, will be representing the cooperative in that planning effort in August. So that's upcoming. And the other thing I just wanted to mention too was that the LCC Council is continuing to form itself up. They've had one meeting, one phone call, and then we'll be meeting again in June. Myself and Mallory Martin from North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission don't necessarily represent this cooperative, but represent the whole in trying to help the council become an influential body in supporting the work of the LCC network. So just wanted to let you know about those a couple of network level activities.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ken, for that note. And yes, I'm kind of living in denial because it's hard for me to think about leaving the Southeast. I've had such an amazing time with the South Atlantic Landscape Conservation Cooperative, but I am indeed leaving. I should be around to host one final web forum. And with that, I'll go ahead and give you some information on it, just so you can be sure to mark your calendars and give a heads up to folks who might be interested. It should be a really, really neat presentation by Dr. Mike Osland, who's a research ecologist with the USGS National Wetlands Research Center and an affiliate with the Gulf Coastal Plain LCC, presenting his work on beyond just sea level rise, incorporating climate into coastal wetland vulnerability assessments, and that'll take place June 19th at 10 a.m. And finally, as always, we want to make sure that you have plenty of opportunities to get involved with a cooperative. Aside from contacting any one of us directly, you can always connect up with your steering committee member, or if you're not already, please do join the southatlanticlcc.org. You'll get a monthly newsletter as well as reminders for this Third Thursday web forum, and that's all we send out. We try to keep the mail out slow. So with that, we always want to leave time at the end to open the floor for any additional questions folks might have before we sign off, and just remember to *6 to unmute yourself.
And Lori, I need to add one more bullet to the updates. I just wanted to check my email and make sure it's official. So, and maybe folks don't keep up too much with this, but at least I want to make sure that they are aware that we have a little deck shuffling on our steering committee. In our March meeting, Mike Harris from Georgia Department of Natural Resources assumed the chair position for the cooperative, but then very quickly decided he was going to move on to a new position working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and so he will no longer be our chair, but we at that same time had elected the cooperative, the steering committee had elected Beth Stice from Florida to be the vice chair, so she has agreed to very quickly assume the chair role, and we will be looking to nominate and elect the vice chair here in our next June steering committee call. So I want to let you know there was a little shuffling of the decks. And Mike, I don't know if you want to make any comments. I see you're on the participating here today, so if you have anything to add there, that'd be great.
Just thank everybody for their hard work. It's been a pleasure being associated with the South Atlantic LCC, and I hope to stay engaged at some role in the future. Not sure what that might be, but you know, one thing I'll be pushing for, that's those at-risk species and how we can do work that helps their conservation. So that'll something I hope we can continue to incorporate into the blueprint.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Lori, do you mind if I make one promotion area thing here? Just so, as Rua mentioned, we're doing the ecosystem indicators, system by system. So our next one is May 27th. So if you're interested in the landscape indicators, that would include the Nature Conservancy's resilience data set, road density / interior areas, and cultural resources. Please contact Rua, and he'll get you signed up for the meeting. Make sure you're there, and we'll just kind of keep up on those, and you can jump on with what you're most interested in.
Yeah, definitely. You're getting some good heads signing up, but we could always use some other brains, especially on some of these different systems. So definitely, I would encourage you, if you're interested in being part of the discussions about you know, for revising these and also what the models are going to look like, please go to the indicator part of the website and sign up. Just give me a shout if you want to try to be part of the landscapes, which is the terrestrial habitat connections discussion, because that call is going to be on the 27th of this month. So, and you'll also see, so at the beginning of next month, we'll also send out the results from last month. So here's the sort of final results and things like that. So. Any other questions or general thoughts about or sort of recommendations for your cooperative over the next 18 months?
All right. Well, if anything does come to mind, always feel free to shoot any one of us an email, and it looks like we can end a little bit early and let everybody get on with their day if there's no more questions. So thanks, everybody, for participating, and hope to hear y'all on the next call on June 19th.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.